The pottery shard tears through skin like a blade. Not clean. Not surgical, jagged ceramic edges designed for holding olive oil, now ripping through human flesh. Hypatia of Alexandria, the greatest mathematician in the Roman Empire, feels another piece strike her shoulder. Then her arm. Then her face. She's naked in a church, surrounded by men calling themselves servants of God, and they're killing her with broken pottery they grabbed off the street. This is March 415 CE. This is how intellectual authority dies, when religious power decides it cannot tolerate questions. Think about what's happening in this moment. A woman who taught astronomy to students from across the Mediterranean, who explained conic sections and preserved Greek mathematics for future generations, who advised the Roman prefect governing Egypt, she's being murdered in broad daylight inside Christianity's own headquarters in Alexandria, and nobody's stopping it. The men doing this aren't random criminals. They're organized. They have a leader, Peter the Lector, who reads scripture in church services. They have institutional backing, and they have absolute certainty that what they're doing is righteous. Because Hypatia represents something more dangerous than heresy. She represents the idea that truth can be pursued without permission from those who claim to speak for God. But to understand how we got here, how one of history's most celebrated philosophers ended up being torn apart with broken tiles, we need to go back 3 years, to the moment when a man named Cyril became Patriarch of Alexandria and decided that intellectual diversity was an obstacle to be eliminated. Because Hypatia's murder wasn't spontaneous mob violence, it was calculated political assassination. And the calculation began long before the first pottery shard struck her body. Alexandria, in 412 CE, is the intellectual heart of the Mediterranean world. For 7 centuries, this city has been synonymous with learning. The Great Library may have declined, but the tradition it represented, that knowledge matters more than politics, that wisdom transcends religious boundaries, that tradition still commands respect. At the center of this world stands Hypatia, daughter of Theon, last recorded member of the Alexandrian Museum. She's in her 50s, maybe early 60s. She's never married, dedicating her entire life to philosophy and mathematics. She teaches Neoplatonism, the tradition of Plotinus that emphasizes reason and mathematical precision over mysticism. Students travel from distant provinces to study with her. She explains Diophantus on arithmetic, Apollonius on conic sections, subjects requiring years of disciplined study to master. But here's what makes her truly exceptional. She moves freely through Alexandria's streets, appears before magistrates, advises civic officials, commands respect from the city's elite regardless of their religion. Socrates Scholasticus, the Christian historian who documents these events within a generation, describes her as possessing self-assurance and dignity that came from cultivation of her mind. And men admired her all the more for it. That phrase should make you pause. In a world where women are typically confined to domestic roles, where female authority is constantly questioned, Hypatia commands respect because of her intellect. She's not hiding. She's not apologizing. She's publicly, visibly, undeniably brilliant, and that makes her dangerous. Her students include both pagans and Christians. One of them, Synesius of Cyrene, becomes a Christian bishop while maintaining deep respect for his pagan teacher. This is the old Alexandria working exactly as it should. Faith doesn't determine who can learn, who can teach, who can pursue truth. But when Cyril becomes patriarch in 412, he brings a vision of Christian authority that leaves no room for this kind of intellectual coexistence. His appointment is controversial from the start. He moves quickly to consolidate power by targeting anyone he sees as threatening Christian dominance. Unlike his predecessor Theophilus, who maintained working relationships with educated pagans, Cyril views religious diversity as an obstacle to eliminate, and he has the perfect weapon, the Parabellinae, originally organized to care for the sick and dying. These lay attendants to the patriarch have been transformed into something far darker, a private militia, numbering perhaps 800 men, who can be mobilized instantly to advance the church's interests through intimidation and violence. Cyril's first major target is Alexandria's Jewish community. In Patrus sute pais presece, following violence between Christians and Jews, he leads the Parabellani in a coordinated attack. They seize synagogues, confiscate Jewish property, drive many Jews from the city entirely. It's ethnic cleansing disguised as religious purification. And it works. The Roman prefect Orestes is horrified. As the emperor's representative, he's responsible for maintaining order and protecting all citizens regardless of religion. He sends an angry report to Constantinople, condemning Cyril's actions and demanding imperial intervention. This is the worst thing Orestes could have done, because now the conflict becomes personal. Cyril responds by summoning 500 monks from the desert monasteries of Nitria, where he himself trained. These aren't gentle contemplatives. These are men who've spent years in extreme ascetic practices, who've been taught that the material world is evil, that pagan learning is demonic, that compromise with unbelievers is spiritual death. They descend on Alexandria like an invading army. They confront Orestes in the streets, surrounding his chariot as he rides through the city, publicly accusing him of paganism. When Orestes insists he's been baptized by the Bishop of Constantinople, one of the monks, Ammonius, throws a stone that strikes the prefect's forehead, causing serious injury. Orestes' guards abandon him in fear. The prefect of Egypt, the emperor's personal representative, is left bleeding in the street while armed monks threaten his life. A crowd of Alexandrians rush to protect him and manage to capture Ammonius. Orestes orders the monk subjected to fatal punishment as penalty for assaulting the emperor's representative. This is entirely legal. Attempted murder of a high imperial official carries the death penalty. But Cyril's response reveals everything about how this conflict will end. He declares the dead monk a martyr, gives him a church funeral, renames him Thaumacius, the Wonderful. The message is unmistakable. Those who attack the prefect aren't criminals, but holy warriors deserving veneration. Even many Christians in Alexandria find this grotesque. They recognize that Ammonius died for attempting murder, not for his faith. But Cyril's supporters understand what their patriarch is telling them: violence against the prefect's authority is righteous. And in this poisoned atmosphere, everyone knows who advises Orestes, who has his ear, who represents everything Cyril is trying to destroy. Hypatia becomes the focal point of the patriarch's faction's rage. Rumors spread through the Christian community that she's bewitched Orestes through sorcery, that she practices magic, that her unnatural learning, a woman mastering mathematics and philosophy, can only come from demonic forces. To Cyril's supporters,